back. Last episode we did compression testing. We kind of tracked down some of the problems with why one of the cylinders wasn't firing. It turned out it was just a fouled spark plug. New spark plugs fixed that. This is still running incredibly rich, which is what we're going to start on looking into today. At the end of the last episode we said I was going to take the valve cover off, start looking at that. We'll get to that in a second. But in order to get the SPICA pump into the queue with Wes Ingram, the guru of all SPICA pumps, I sent out an email to get in the queue. He's shot back a couple of suggestions of things I could try to see if we can get, I mean, the pump definitely needs to be refurbished and fixed and all that sort of stuff. But basically determining what are the other problems, what are the other issues with it while I still have the pump in the car before I send it off. He suggested a bunch of things to try in his book, and I'll put a link in the description. It's a great resource for all the SPICA pumps type of work that you can do on these types of cars. It's basically everything you need to know about it. So what we're going to do today is go through those steps in the book that he laid out, that he suggested I do, to see if we can fix the issues that are in here. Go through all of that. I'll show you the parts of the book that I'm going to go through. I'll put all the links to all the different pages, numbers, and all that sort of thing in there. But first, one of the issues with this is one of the diagnostic pieces is about timing. I have a timing lane and all that sort of stuff. But the problem is, as we saw in the last episode, the air conditioning compressor in this car, since this is an air conditioning car, is taking up so much room that it's basically impossible. You can't see anything. It takes up, there's a bunch of pulleys and stuff in the way. The compressor wheel itself is huge and it's in the way as well. And there's this gigantic bracket. So today first thing we're going to do is we're going to work on getting rid of this air conditioning compressor, get it out of our way so we have a bit more room to maneuver and to work on this. So that's what we're going to get started on. All right, let me give you a little closer view on what we're talking about here with this compressor. So this is the pump right here. The hoses have been disconnected, the hoses already. But there's this massive bracket that is, it's hard to see way down there, but it's attached to looks like the case down there. There's a couple of bolts straight into the front of the case here. And as you can see, it takes up so much room, and you can just barely see anything down there that you need to look at. And then there's this upper wheel, upper pulley here that holds the belt for the two belts actually for the air conditioning pump are very in the way. So let's start getting rid of this. Alright, first things first, let's get this pulley off. Get it out of the way first. Doing. Try it the first time. All right. The front of this bracket is held on with these two big nuts on the studs coming out of the front of the engine. It looks like it might be a better option to take, yeah, if I can get to them, there's 1, 2, 3, probably 4 bolts into the compressor itself. Yeah, show you. So there is a bolt here, a bolt down there, one right here, and one down there. So that will be the next thing. All right, slight change of plans. There's 2 exposed bolts going into from the bracket into the compressor at the top, and there's one down here that I showed you that I can get to, but the other one is way down here. So I think the best course of action is going to be to take the 2, there's basically this bracket's in 2 parts. There is this part of the bracket, and you can see there's a split here, but this goes all the way down to below the alternator, and I think I can get down there, loosen that, get this bracket just kind of out of the way. Then the compressor itself will be supported entirely by this bracket that's on the front, but then take this bracket and the pump out together, and that way I can, well, won't even need to bother about detaching the pump from the bracket. I'll just take the whole thing out as one. I'll have to find a awfully large wrench for those. Okay, so that's plan B. Too long. Okay, so there's apparently a bushing on that's probably pretty gone. I don't know if I'm going to refit this air conditioning pump on it. I'll probably just tie these, for the time being, I'm going to just tie the hoses back. There's a lot of extra stuff here. You know, there's the Just all these parts to the air conditioning system that are just, you know, just taking up a lot of space in the engine compartment. This thing probably weighs a ton. So I'll probably just delete this for now. I'll keep it, obviously, stay with the car. So I think it's an important piece of this car. I want to keep it as original as possible. But this one is just really, really in the way. Next up, these two big guys. All right, for those wondering, these are these guys here and here. Make sure you guys can see that. What I'm doing here. Yep. Okay, those guys are 24 millimeters. Big guys. Huge. All right, let's see if we can get that thing off now. Okay. Okay, this will come as no surprise to anybody who works on these cars. There's not enough space between the fan, the shroud for the fan, and the radiator, and the wheel for the compressor pump. Okay, yeah. So I can't get that off, the bracket off. So I think the compressor. Oh man, what a pain. The compressor is going to have to come off of the bracket, but now that I can move it forward and backwards, I can probably have a hope of actually getting to this bolt back here. Oh man. Okay, well, let's start in on it. Every bolt is a different size. There's 13, 14. There's some. Okay. So I'm going to put this back on. So there's bushings in there. There's bushings in the. There's rubber bushings in the front bracket here that holds the compressor pump on, and I don't want to mess those up by wiggling them a whole bunch. So I'm just going to quickly put these guys back on just to hold it into place, so I can at least crack the those guys. see that one. All right. Yes. All right. Well, if you had it, your scorecard of me dropping a washer or a bolt had it at about 10 minutes in, you won. I'm going to do that a lot. I don't usually wear these thick mechanics gloves, but it's so cold out here today that kind of have to. All right, now I got to get way down in there, get that guy, which fouls on the wrench fouls on the exhaust header, and okay, so it's pretty clear what they do is they install this bracket compressor pump, the pump onto the bracket, the pump onto the bracket onto the engine before they fit the radiator. But I don't want to take the radiator out for obvious reasons. Don't want to have to do that yet. And right now there is one bolt. It's like way down in there I need to get to. Let me figure out how that is. I'm going to do that and then I'll come back. Okay, so I think I figured it out. Okay, so the last bolt on here holding the compressor to the bracket is nearly impossible to get to. So I took all the other ones out, and when you do that, you can actually rotate the pump like that. So hopefully that gives us enough clearance to get it off the or not. Okay, so it doesn't, but I think I'm wiggling this thing. It's probably given me the ability to just take out this last. Okay, hold on. This thing weighs so much, it just basically swings back and forth on the bracket, just smashing my knuckles into the other parts of the engine compartment, which is fun. Just trying desperately to get the wrench onto that last bolt. Sweet, got it on one of those. I have about 1/16 of a turn worth of space. I can't really see anything. It's like a Alfa Special. All right. Finally got it. It's exactly what you'd expect. Just to get way down in there. It's very fiddly. Oh, boy. Some wires I didn't see before. Snag this harness. One incredibly heavy air conditioning pump out of the way. Whew. Okay. Now I can get this gigantic I don't know if you can really I gotta clean this up and everything, but this bracket is just thick plate steel. It probably weighs, itself probably weighs, I don't know, 15 pounds. Ugh. Yeah. Not sure why they had to build it so beefy. It's just, well, I mean, the pump probably weighs 30 pounds. So anyway, so as you can see, now we've got a ton more room. A lot more access to all the stuff we need to get to. Belts, hoses, all that sort of stuff. This other part of the bracket I'll take off in a little bit. I just don't want it rattling around in there, but it's not really in the way at this point. This goes to the front other radiator, the evaporator, the other part, whatever you call the part of the air conditioner that's looks like a radiator. So, all right, success. All right, I'm going to clean that up and then come back. Okay, so you can see now that there is quite a bit more space. You can actually see the oil filter. Since the air conditioner pump sits here, there's no battery tray. Batteries in the back. But yeah, this gives you a lot more room. Thing there. Basically what I'm doing right now is it's so rusty, it's really hard to see the timing marks on the actual outside of the thing. The pulley on the front that doesn't cause any problems. What the problem was is that there's so much rust on it you can't even see the timing mark. So what I'm doing is I'm putting the car in fourth, transmission in fourth, and I'm just kind of pushing it back and forth to basically just to see where those are. And I'm using a little bit of sandpaper and some elbow grease and some cleaner and stuff, and I got to clean up that pulley so I can actually see the timing marks. So the reason we're doing this is one of the steps in the diagnosing compression and richness. I mean, not compression. How rich the water, the engine's running, and all that sort of stuff involves making sure that the timing's right. I've never really done the timing. It seems to run fine most of the time, but it's never been really dialed in exactly. Just hadn't gotten to it yet. So that's one of the steps. So let's clean this up, and I'll show you what it looks like after. Okay, so on to the actual diagnosis. So I have the SPICA manual here on my iPad. Step one here is checking the pump timing. This has never been off the car. That's never been futzed with. It also has the original cover on it, so it's impossible to do. So I'm going to have to skip that one. I believe this one's fine. I don't think anybody's ever messed with this. If this is the problem, we'll find out when I actually take the pump off and all of that. Get to that one later. Next is fuel pressure light. So the fuel pressure light is going to be this guy right here. The test is if it comes on when you turn the key to the on position and the fuel pump starts, let it run for 5 seconds, turn it off, and then if you turn it back to on again, it should just blip. So I've run it a little bit just testing to see this because I actually found a problem, and I'll go over that in a second. But if you turn this to on, you see how it just blips real quick. So blips on and off. That means it is working. So fuel pressure light works. So with the air filter removed, let me show you where. So this is where the air box goes. I'm taking it off. This is the fuel pressure switch or indicator, the light. Now mine is actually probably needs to be replaced. What ended up happening and why I had to diagnose it is this little metal part on the top of the switch where the wire plugs into is actually loose. It's kind of spinning around. It's probably just been jostled and hit when I've, whatever. So I'll probably need a new one of those anyway, but for now it works. If you just kind of jimmy it on there, works fine. So that isn't the problem. So on to the next step. Okay, so section 103 is fuel light comes on, does not go on or never goes off. Check, that's good. Fuel light comes on while driving, that does not happen. A lot of this is testing the fuel supply pump. So one of the things I've already done, I've already taken the tank out and replaced all of the fuel lines all the way up to the pump itself. So it's a new fuel pump, new fuel filters, tank's been taken out, cleaned, all new fuel lines. So that is, we're going to assume that isn't the problem. So the next step is, but this is really good advice. So a lot of the pressure, this is about, essentially what ends up happening with a car that sits for 10 years with gas in it. It gets a bunch of rust and gunk and varnish, and old gas is the worst. This had a whole bunch of it in it. It was a mess. And cleaning the tank was a whole ordeal. Probably good because the amount of swearing that I did doing it, even trying to get the tank out of the trunk, it's good that I didn't do that on camera. So anyway, next one is we're going to start with checking the timing, but first we want to make sure that we want to check the reference gap on the pump prior when it's cold, and then warm up the car to 175. Next step is engine timing, and then checking the reference gap on the side of the pump when it's warm. Okay, so we have to measure the gap on there after the gap on the back of the SPICA pump over there after the car is warm up to 180 degrees. Run it for a little bit. But one of the other things that is in the checklist, things to look at, is make sure that the timing is correct. I have not adjusted the timing on this, so that could be one of the things. So I've got my timing light out. It's according to the shop manual here. At idle, the mark should be at the F mark on there, which corresponds to the, see right there, the F mark. There's two ones that are close together, and then one farther back and one farther back from that. So that is what we are going to do. I cleaned up the wheel, the pulley before. It's still a little hard to see. I'm just going to make sure that I'm labeling the F mark, the one I'm actually looking for, so it's really easy to identify. So let me get back down in there. I have to push the car back and forth to get it to turn over to that one. I'll mark it, and then we can set the timing. Okay, so ran the first setting, first go at this, and it's off. Timing's off. So now I'm going to have to go over here, shine the light, go on the other side of the car, adjust the, spin the distributor base. I've loosened the screw. Here, let me show you that real quick. So on this car, don't know if you can really, it's hard to see down there. The base of the distributor there is a bolt right there that you can see, and so that means that you can move the, if you loosen that, you can spin this a little bit at a time. So it's just basically going back and forth, making sure that that correct mark lines up at idle. All right, so adjusted the timing, is a little off, but now we can check, and now it's up to speed, up to temperature. Now we can check with the feeler gauge on that rod to determine what the gap is. It needs to be 0.019 or less, but not 0 is what we're looking for. And it is way bigger than that. So what you do now is you take the thermostatic actuator thing out again, make some adjustments. Really long screwdriver. The other fun thing about this is that as you go, everything gets hot. So that's fun. That's a fun part of this job. This isn't working as well this time. So one of the other problems is when you take this thing out, the pin on the bottom of it extends out. So you can't really make any sort of adjustments. You can't check to see if the adjustment you made is correct until you put this thing back in. So it's taking it out, putting it in, taking it out, putting it in, taking it out. One screw. So I've removed, get you zoomed in, I've removed this piece here out of the way. And now there's a screw, an adjustment screw that's down in here. I don't know if you can see that, but you've got to adjust that, and then that will in turn adjust the gap between this stop and this rod here. So it is turn counterclockwise to decrease the gap, clockwise to increase the gap. Let me make sure that that's right. So, take the long rod off there when you make the check. Remove the pump, blah, blah, blah. So you want to do turn counterclockwise to decrease the gap. So we want to decrease it, so we are going to go counterclockwise on this. And we're going to do a half turn. Like that. So then you push this. So I'm just grabbing the head of the screw and using it to just get it started in the place where it's supposed to go. So this is the other part, is you have to make sure that this thing is tightened down all the way, because the distance between it has to be seated all the way down, otherwise it'll give you a wrong reading. All right. So that's all tightened down, and let's see how we did. I think I messed up, because I think when I took the original measurement I hadn't taken the rod off, because now it's got no gap. It is just hitting that thing. So that was stupid. Alright, so take this guy back off, and yeah, start over again. Okay, well, it's cold here today, so I had to start it all over. I had to start the car back up and let it run for a while because the temperature had dropped so fast. All right, so not going to be a dummy this time, and I'm going to detach this long rod first before I measure. So let's try at here's the 0.019. Let's give that a shot first. Nope. It's not that wide. Let's try these are really thin. Let's try 1. This is 0.01. 0.06. Whoa! Let's try not touching the starter. Yeah, so it's basically like just rubbing a little bit there. Okay, don't touch the starter, or you'll get a good chunk out of your... Yikes. All right, well, kind of welded them together too. That's good. Okay, so now what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to make sure that when you put this rod back on, it's not going to make anything move, right? So it's got to be, this is where it should be. This is where the throttles should be. Like when you put this rod on, it shouldn't make it longer or shorter. So let's see if that is the case. Okay, it's pushing. It pushes it down. So we need to shorten this rod. You can just adjust the screws, and they go in. All right, let's give that a shot. Okay, let's say that is exactly what we want right there. So take this off, tighten these things down so they don't move. Okay, so this gap has been adjusted, this rod length has been adjusted, this has been adjusted, the timing has been adjusted. So now, let's see if that helped with starting and all that sort of stuff. Okay, well, as you can see, now it runs, and I'll tell you what it was. It was pretty dumb. So, this rod here is that controls the throttle, the gas, right? Moves the pump. This other connecting rod, this little rod here, opens the butterflies on all of these that lets air in. This had come popped loose from here and was just sitting like dangling. So, check your connection. Okay, so while that thing gets up to back up to temperature again, so we can check the gap of the on the back of the pump, check to see the spacing as long as it's 0.019 or below. We can go ahead and look through what's next. I think we're done adjusting the pump, and I think the next one is adjusting the relay crank. So one of the things that they had said in the section, there's a vent hole here on the top of the engine of the, here, let me show you on the car. This hole right here should, if you put your finger over this, that should be able to kill the idle. That shouldn't be getting, not enough air should not be getting past these. So now next is to make sure that those are adjusted, those butterflies are adjusted correctly, and making sure that not too much air is getting in. Alright, so we're going to check the gap on this again. Remove the long rod. I think this is still, I still have not gotten this right. So let's check that space there. Well, it's not. Let's try 13. Oops. Let's try 13. Okay, it's less than 13. Let's try 10. Less than 10. Let's try 7. I think it's pretty much 0. I'm going to give it another half a turn to open it up a little bit. Okay, so the gap's right. It's still not running very well. It's certainly not true if you hold your thumb over this, and according to the manual, that should kill the engine, should be able to kill that, but it doesn't. And there's actually quite a bit of air being pulled through here. So the next step is to remove the throttle cable out of its holder, and then we're going to start adjusting these two screws here and here that adjust how much that does its thing. Though I don't know how much. I mean, that rod is pulling that as close to, as tight as it can go. So I don't know how much what that's gonna do. I think there might be some adjustment on the back down here in the back behind here that controls how much the valves, the butterfly valves, open there in the intakes. So let me get this throttle cable off and see what we can do with this. Okay, so throttle cable's out. There's a little nut underneath here, and you pop that loose. Oops. There. And then the trick is to move this. See how that's just slightly moving that whole shuttle thing. This whole assembly is kind of tilting back and forth. This is a stop that stops it going back and forth this way. So you move it, you basically press it, screw it in until you basically just stop seeing any movement. Then that is where you want to tighten that bad boy down again. All right, so that didn't really do anything. It was already set correctly. All right, well, we're gonna give it another shot. I've adjusted that. I don't think that did anything. I think there's something, I think these are still staying open too much. I need to do some more research and find out why exactly those, how you adjust the, they're supposed to be flat and then they open like this. What I want them to do, I think they're just a little, and there seems to be an adjustment back here in the back. I just need to look up how to do that. But changing this rod length and changing how much this spins it doesn't do anything. This screw was not the problem. It was not holding this up. The travel on the lower part of the arm, it can't go up any higher. So let me look into that, see if there's just some air getting in there. And then I need to email Wes Ingram back and tell him what I've discovered so far. The issue is the more of the next few phases of the working on the fuel system, I don't just know if I'm going to be able to do it. I'm quickly getting out of. I'm pretty much done everything I can do. I'll read up some more. Maybe next week we can, take a look at it and see if there's, something that I can do, or if it's just I'm just doing it in over my head, or the pump might just be to the point where it just needs to be replaced before I start trying to tweak and adjust and all that sort of stuff. I might just be wasting my time. So anyway, I'm going to fire it up, see if that fixed anything. I don't think it did, but let's hope. So I would say that it's running, but not particularly well. So, all right, well, let me do some research and I'll get back to this. Until then, see ya.